Hi HR Nation, welcome to HR Leaders Podcast, a show where we explore the future of work with industry experts and HR executives from the world's leading global brands. Today we're joined by Aaron Lammers, who's the HR Director for Northern Europe at General Mills. Aaron, welcome to the show. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. I'm glad we finally made this happen.
Exactly. Yeah, great.
It took a while. I'm so sorry for going back and forth, but I'm really excited to have you on the show now. I feel like we're best friends at this point. Before we jump in, Aaron, you have such an interesting story. So tell our listeners a bit about yourself personally and your journey to where we are now.
So New Zealander, born and bred, left their fine shores in 2007 to move to Melbourne in Australia. So I've was there for 10 years before coming up here to the UK in early 2017. I've had a varied HR career. I studied industrial psychology. I have worked in banking, IT, have worked in the dairy industry. Spent 10 years in Shell, which was a cool experience to work in oil and gas, and then feel like I've come home to where I love it the most in the food industry. So CPG is fantastic. So yeah, here for 2 years now and loving it.
Fantastic. So tell us how you ended up in the UK.
I joined General Mills in Melbourne in 2015. I've got wife, 2 children. We loved it in Melbourne. It was a pretty cool place to be. And it's funny talking to people here. They ask, "Why did you come to the UK?" Because half the people here seem to be trying to get down to Australia. The company just asked if I wanted to give things a go at coming up here to the UK and seeing if I could make a difference in the business up here. I wasn't necessarily thinking it was a good idea to move from Melbourne, but I spoke to a mentor of mine, and she said, "Don't you want to see how far it can go and what you can do?" That's what kind of changed it for me. I didn't want to be left wondering.
How did you sort of balance, especially now as a dad? I've just become a dad myself. How did you manage that decision with the family, and what did that look like? Because I know that's obviously a big part of it, of course.
Yeah. Well, my wife's she's a consultant. We met at university, so she does similar stuff except in the consulting world.
Mm-hmm.
She was doing a PhD at the time, which she was just closing out. It was fairly portable. So again, it's let's just give it a go. I've got 2 kids. They're early teenage years. My son has autism, so we were concerned about making our way and turning his world upside down.
Mm-hmm.
We're given his need for stability and consistency, but the company's been incredibly supportive. You couldn't wish to work for a better company in terms of making that stuff happen.
That's one thing I love about General Mills. They've always been very supportive, haven't they? Even speaking to Christina, Vice President of Europe and Australia, she came from the US, right?
Yep.
Also on international assignment based in Switzerland. They're really investing in their leaders. It's so impressive, and one of the reasons why they retain their talent so well.
I'll never forget the moment when it was getting kind of tricky from a disability perspective, and it was Christina actually. She I'll never forget what she said, and she said, "If you're keen, we're keen." And they just kind of made it happen. So there was some additional support they provided around, schooling for kids with autism and all sorts. So it was just like they weren't going to let someone in our situation not have that opportunity just because of that.
And as you just said, those are the moments that you will never forget, and it sticks with you when a company goes, I wouldn't even say above and beyond, because that should be the norm, but it's not.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Unfortunately. So you've just joined. What did the first sort of 6 months look like? What did you prioritize?
Yeah, interesting. I kind of divided
to the UK weather. Apart from that, you're like, well, what's going on here? Where am I?
I started in late May, and it was 30 degrees, and
it fooled you.
I couldn't get cool enough because there's no aircon here.
That's another thing. We don't have aircon. That must have been a question.
Yeah, it's crazy, and we've had good summers since, so I'm not going to hear any bad words about the UK weather. Yeah, look, I kind of divided it up into kind of 3 words that all start with C, really, and it was fixing the core. So it was thinking about where can we make a difference on the basics that make all organisations tick, and it's bringing clarity, and that sort of has to come at the same time, but a little bit afterwards, and then building capability. So there were 3 C words that were quite important to me. And I guess the core thing took a lot longer than I thought. I sort of figured I'd be into creating capability and looking at talent and leadership and culture a lot more quickly than we were. We felt like we needed to look at the structure and have a structure that was fit for purpose in this environment, given the challenges and given how dynamic the customer and consumer environment is here. We needed a structure that was fit for purpose, and some of our processes needed a look at. We wanted to make sure that we had good data, good insights, so that you could run a business and provide that clarity. So yeah, that was probably the first challenge, and I think that took us a good year to get through some of that work.
What was it that took longer than you expected? What was the barriers?
Processes. It's kind of the boring stuff, but
exciting stuff.
There's no point in trying all
without that in place.
Stuff
yeah.
If you haven't got that nailed, and we still battle with it, right? I think all organizations do. But I kind of see an organization as an organism, a system where you've got to understand how things all connect together. It's a kind of value chain thing for me, and I think the sooner HR people can understand how an organization creates value, and particularly from an HR perspective, how it destroys value as well. That's where you sort of want to inject yourself and understand what we can do from a people perspective, because inevitably it's people barriers that get in the way of that stuff a lot of time. So it was really thinking which parts of that process, of that value chain, are falling down, and where can we make a difference.
Did you already have a team in place there?
Great team, actually, and most of us are still here. So Christina actually had done quite a bit of good work and building up a fabulous team that I'm still benefiting from. So that
you can thank her for it.
Yeah.
Where we are now, then, what's the key priorities for you?
I think fundamentally it's about getting the right people in the right roles, and if you get great people and eliminate the barriers that are getting in the way, they'll perform in spades. I agree, though, the high performance thing is bandied around quite a bit, so we've tried to think quite carefully about what that means to us.
Yeah,
there's a guy I came across in Australia, Andrew Meikle, and he's a high performance guy. He's an ex-Ironman, and one of the things that I really took from his work is you've got to find out the truth. So if you find out the absolute truth on what high performance looks like, then it's far easier to identify it. It's far easier to recognize it. And the opposite applies, right? If you truly understand what you feel about low performance and you know what that looks like, then you can also deal with that around managing consequences, etc. But yeah, and this is where it comes back, and it's all linked to the process work, right? If you've got good insights and good data, and you're dealing in facts and the truth,
then you can see what good looks like.
Yeah.
Then it's that's actually what good looks like, as opposed to an opinion.
Exactly, and what people are prepared to tell you. But I just have this fundamental belief that people turn up to work wanting to do a great job. No
one turns up wanting to do a terrible job.
So it's kind of just allowing them to do that, and that's high performance.
Yeah, a big part of that, because I hear it more and more now, empowering your employees to make decisions and to do the work. A lot of time it's the actual managers and the leaders that are getting in the way. And I've been guilty of this personally myself, as a leader, of sometimes getting in the way. I am, when you realize that you are the bottleneck yourself as well. So it's something that I'm working on as well. And I think we all could learn from that. How are you then empowering your employees and your own team to make decisions? Yeah,
it's a super interesting question for us right now. We've kind of been grappling with this a bit for the last 6 months or so as a leadership team. We've got some fabulous leaders in our organisation, but I feel like in the first couple of years for us, we were very much focused on providing clarity and setting targets, giving good direction. And then before you know it, you sort of feel like you've got some good control over the business. But if you go too far with that, it can become a bit suffocating. So I guess we've been focused on how do we take that, because last year we became the fastest growing food company in the UK. So commercially, we've had some fantastic outcomes. So then how do you say, okay, we're kind of doing okay on that front? How do you then take that autonomy and push it further down in the organization? So we're talking about how do we displace power away from a leadership team and sort of push it way down into the organization where people just turn up to work and they feel like they've got some control, they've got a voice, and they've got that autonomy to do the great job that they want to do.
Well, I think one thing that's really interesting about your role is that you're on assignment for 3 years, right? This is a 3-year project, if you want to call it that. Does that change the way that you approach this?
Yeah, I think it does. For me personally, I guess whenever I've gone into a job, I try to think about the time that I have to make a difference and what story I want to be able to tell at the conclusion of a year or 2 years or 3 years. So I just think it's a great way to try and build a career, because it sort of struck me at one point in time, you always get asked this stuff in job interviews, right? Tell me about a time when. And it's like, if you kind of build your career around having stories to tell, that's got to put you in a better position when you have a job interview. But yeah, it has focused my mind. And especially the way these things happen, the company invests in you to bring you to a place. You better make a return. You better give the company a return. So yeah, it's focused the mind that I've got a period of time to get some outcomes for sure.
Yeah, I've noticed that. I've done over 150 of these interviews, and the most successful HR leaders that I speak to always say, when I ask them, what made you successful, they always talk about the international assignments they took.
Yeah.
Throwing themselves into the deep end. The growth that they personally gained from that. What have you personally gained from this experience so far, do you think, in yourself?
Fundamentally, I love what I do. It's people have sort of asked me from time to time, would you do anything else, or what would the job you love look like? And it's like this one, and the last one was the same. The one before that was the same. I just fundamentally love my profession and what I do. So I derive a pretty good amount of energy just from doing that. I find organizations endlessly fascinating. As I said before, they're kind of complex organisms, and figuring that out is awesome. And so, but coming up here, I guess it's a bigger organization than the last part of the organization I was in. It's more complex, it's faster. It's a different environment. So that gives you exciting. It's different customers, different consumers. So it's really just that refresh and the stretch. But I do love the pressure of what's the difference you're going to make in my time here. And that's kind of cool.
So what's been the highlight for you so far since you joined, sort of the wins that you're proud of?
Yeah, look, I think a particularly rewarding part for me is the work that I've done with our leadership team. Absolutely world class. It's a fantastic group of people, and it was interesting actually through Christina and her boss Bethany. They kind of challenged us to see if we could bring quite a new group of people together in kind of 12 hours instead of 12 months, I think was the quote my boss gave to me. So we thought, well, how do we do that? So I actually designed a kind of 2-day program where we went away, nowhere fancy. It was about creating that vulnerability and making each of us feel like we were a bit exposed, but that also we had mechanisms for having each other's backs. And I think that if you can open up that really, really early on, tremendously useful. So we kind of felt there was a connection that went beyond just your regular day to day, and we hadn't had a lot of that up until then. But it's kind of worked as magic, and we've built off that some quite good mechanisms that have helped us as a leadership team and helped us stay on track.
What did the day look like? Did you bring in someone external to lead the session?
If you're going to be truly vulnerable and be fundamentally exposed in front of your colleagues and talk about some quite important stuff, things that are getting in the way of you being the manager or the leader you want to be, where you want to get to, how the team can help, what your weaknesses are, what you're scared about. It's hard to do that with somebody outside the team, so we deliberately focused on having that conversation ourselves. So I led that, but I had to go first. And I won't forget that. It was I wanted to do that. I was prepared to do that. What I wasn't prepared for was getting quite emotional at that time. But looking back, I think that set the tone. It left everybody nowhere else to go but to kind of do the same. So that was cool.
You ask people, because I think this is a great exercise for everyone listening right now to do.
Yeah.
I've done it before in the past.
A couple of things we did, a couple of quite meaningful things. I think the first one was, some of the listeners will have heard of Keegan and Leahy's immunity to change work. So we kind of work through that, which is, what are the kind of uncovering the deep-seated values that you hold that kind of go against the changes that you want to make. And it's interesting. It's kind of a 4-step process. It's tricky, but if you grab their book and have a look, you'll be able to do it. And it's kind of going back and realizing they Keegan and Leahy use the language of it's like having one foot on the accelerator while you've got the foot on the brake, because while you're wanting to change, and for a lot of leaders, right, it's I need to be more strategic, or I need to place more value on time with my team, or whatever you're working on. If you think about it and kind of work back to some things that you've developed in the past, or how you've evolved even from childhood, early career, professional, there will be stuff in there that is kind of fundamentally in the back of your mind going against you doing that. So we tried to uncover that.
What types of questions are you asking then, the leader? What type of questions are you asking leaders to draw out that experience? And
yeah. So it's really questions around, thinking through what the barriers are to the change that they want to make. And once you've identified those barriers, it's thinking back about the experiences that you've had that have taken you to that place where it's getting in the way. So there's some cool language they use and terms that they use that will kind of help you get that. But the whole notion of an immunity to change, it's trying to get back to what were the things that happened in your life that led you to being immune to making that fundamental change. Because a lot of leaders, right, this has been in play for 15, 20, 30 years, and it's hard to change. It's not like you can have a development plan conversation and go, oh, okay, that's what organizations often expect is okay, you need to behave differently from tomorrow. It's harder than that. And I think we as HR practitioners, we need to understand this stuff and how to help people at a different level kind of change the way that they behave for the better.
So is the idea around that as a group to help that person find perhaps what those things were that were holding them back? Because it's hard to say. When someone asked me what's holding me back, I was like, if I knew that, I wouldn't be. If I knew what's holding me back, I wouldn't be doing it, right? As well. So is that part of it as well? Is the group?
It's allowing some time, right, and probing and talking to each other.
What did it look like? Is it one-on-one or small groups? How did you organize it on the day?
So it's both. There's some individual work where we sort of get them working through a bit of a process on their own. So working back from what the goal is that they want to change to where they think some of that immunity lies, where they think it came from, and then testing it out with people. So being more external about it, I think helps, and you can get some feedback. We did individual, one-on-one and group work. It was a good half day to kind of get through it. So we spent some time on it, and we've come back to it as well, because it's quite a journey for people. And we only focus on one thing. It's not like we're trying to change the world, but we figured that there's 11 of us on the leadership team across our Northern European cluster. If 11 things get to change, that adds up.
A big change. Yeah,
difference.
Exactly. And the important thing about that is you're all aligned of what those 11 things are.
Yeah. So we created a process we called Speedback. I stole some of it from David Rock because
Speedback. Is that? Oh, that's mate. That's good. I didn't know. I've never heard of that one yet. That's
we kind of made it up. It works for us anyway. I don't know if it worked for anyone else, but the work David Rock's doing with the Neuro Leadership Institute, trying to turn feedback on its head, where you create a culture where you ask for feedback instead of the more threatening, wandering up to somebody and just giving them feedback. So we kind of crossed that with speed dating, and we have kind of over 5 minutes just have one-to-one sessions in our leadership team meetings where we give each other feedback, and a lot of it's based around the immunity to change. So we that's how we kind of keep that momentum going over time. So even if we've got an hour where we want to do some work on this, we might have 6 rounds of feedback.
And everyone's present, everyone's listening.
Everyone's doing it, even online. So we've got a couple of guys that dial in from the likes of Germany and Ireland, and we it works online as well, because we've kind of got that relationship.
The reason I'm spending some time on this, and also for everyone listening, I feel like this is the most important thing out of everything, because you can talk about strategies and everything, but if you guys aren't aligned and you haven't got each other's backs and you don't have that bond, then nothing else is going to happen. And building that strong relationship that you have with each other and understanding each other, being vulnerable is so powerful. And understanding what people's strengths and weaknesses are, and those relationships, that is where the success comes from.
You lift your game as a team then, because the alternative is that everybody's running around trying to be credible and prove themselves and hide their weaknesses. Lift themselves up. Whereas if you've genuinely got each other's backs, you can lop off the kind of 11 things that are holding you back if you've got one each, and we've all got more, let's face it, so you might get 22 or 30.
But now you're working together to achieve it as opposed to individually, right? So do you think it's also easier now to have those more difficult conversations?
Yes, it's a muscle. It's absolutely a muscle. We're not perfect by any stretch, but even if we have 5 minutes at the end of a leadership team meeting, we'll do one round of feedback. So every time we meet in a meaningful way, we're doing it. So we've got that muscle pretty well worked, where we ask for some help with something we're working on. Most of us actually know what each other's working on now. It becomes more acceptable just to talk about it in the moment as it happens as well. So half the time we're kind of not even waiting for a feedback session. It doesn't feel so confrontational,
Yeah, exactly, because it's now part of the culture of your leadership team. What's the feedback been since? What changes have you seen in them, and what was the initial feedback they gave you? I'm sure what they must have spoke to them one-on-one at some point, and they're giving you some feedback.
Mostly felt it was transformational. If I talked to my boss, he felt that it did bring us pretty closer as a team, but had each other's back. So even more broadly, the conversations we have now, it's kind of like with brothers and sisters, right? You can have a really robust conversation, but you'll still love each other afterwards. It sort of feels a bit like that. We're not frightened of kind of dynamics and rubbish and bravado that can often sort of get in the way. So the feedback's been good. Really, really good.
Really good. I'm glad to hear it. I'm glad we jumped onto that topic, because I think that's just something I always like to find things as well that our listeners can do tomorrow, and that's very practical. And what was the name of that book again?
Of the immunity to change stuff.
Yeah.
So Keegan and Leahy were the two authors. I've done a lot of work in this area. If you Google those guys, it'll immunity to change. It'll come up. There's a couple of nice articles, and there's even a PDF you can download of how to step through the process.
Really fantastic. I'll find that and link it in the description.
Great book as well. Yeah.
Fantastic, everyone. Well, that leads us quite nicely onto the quick fire round, Darren. So I'm going to ask you 5 questions.
Awesome.
You no longer than 30 seconds to give us some amazing answers.
Yeah, cool.
Are you ready? What was the number one thing that was holding you back from becoming a senior HR leader?
Yeah, if anything, it was probably broadening out my experiences beyond where I sort of grew up in New Zealand. So I think taking a role in a couple of different countries has been the difference for me. So not broadening out early enough might have been the thing that held me back, I think.
What's the best piece of business advice you've ever received?
I think it's one of the things I said earlier around, particularly as HR people, understand how a company makes and destroys value. And understand that early, and then you'll be focusing your HR efforts in the right areas.
What's one book you recommend to our audience?
Immunity to Change, Keegan and
Leahy. Practical. You guys can go and grab that.
Actually, one more then.
Sure.
My wife put a book in front of me the other day that I found incredibly useful, and a few people in our organisation have found incredibly useful as well. It's Marshall Goldsmith wrote a follow-up to his book called How Women Rise.
Yeah, I know. It's been every time I go on LinkedIn, that book's being put. Someone's writing a review on it. It's definitely making an impact. So
right. Nothing like giving people 12 things to.
Exactly. In terms of your own personal learning, your own development, could you share some internet resources that you use to increase your own knowledge and even productivity?
Yeah, honestly, I tend to be a bit of a geek on that front when it comes down to research and resources. I tend to stick to some of the psych journals from my psychology background because that's where I feel like I find the gold because it's all very research based.
Harder to find though, right?
Evidence.
Like the gold.
It is. Well, again, so my wife's doing a PhD, right? She just finished. So I've had pretty good access to journals through the universities these days.
Oh, nice.
And that might be coming to an end. I might have to pay for it myself now. Applied psychology is the mecca of org research.
And it's not going to change, right? Psychology, no. Right? Any other resources you use, or in terms of? Obviously, I know you're on LinkedIn because we speak there sometimes.
Yeah, I think LinkedIn's fabulous for inspiration. But I fundamentally think talking to fellow HR directors and colleagues is
you can't replace that, right?
To learn that, my dad said what a lot of dads say, which is you got 2 ears, 1 mouth for a reason. Open your ears.
That's a good that's good advice for everyone listening.
Ask questions and listen, right, and you'll learn. You don't learn a whole lot by talking.
Yeah, exactly. What's one thing about your business that you're most excited about today?
Our brands, for sure. It's that's why I love the place. I believe in our brands. I think they're exciting. There's
What's your favorite one?
Old El Paso, Mexican.
Yes,
yeah,
love it.
It's absolutely. Most people say Haagen-Dazs.
I know. I ate a lot of that when we was at your office in Switzerland.
Well, it's a stunning product and stunning brand. But there's something about Mexican cooking and innovation. Flair, the spice.
My wife loves Old El Paso.
Love it. Yeah,
she loves them. She's a big fan of those. Me, I think mine will have to be the ice cream.
Well, the cool thing about our products are extremely flexible, so you can take bits and pieces of it and try stuff yourself and add things to it. So it's super fun and great fun to do with kids.
Yeah.
And, we would love to think we played a role in getting families together in the kitchen and cooking together.
Talking of kitchens, what an amazing kitchen you have in the Switzerland office.
It's not bad. It's not
bad. It's amazing. I walked in.
Almost as good as the Australian office. I
was like, this is amazing. You got this huge kitchen for everyone and all the staff to cook up their food. You had all of the food on the side. I was like, wow. All right. Well, Aaron, thank you so much for taking the time out to join us. You're definitely giving us some great insights and love your journey, and I'm excited to see where it goes from here.
Likewise, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, exactly. And for everyone listening, as always, guys, if you head over to hrleaders.com, there you'll find the show notes from this episode. Anything that Aaron's mentioned will be linked in the description, linked in the books, and the resources that he mentioned will be there for you. Apart from that, Aaron, if there's one sort of parting piece of advice you give to developing HR leaders, what would that be? And also, what's the best way for them to get in contact with you if they have any questions or they want to follow up?
Yeah, I think I've got my email on LinkedIn, so if anyone wants to...
Have you? You should have said that now out loud. That means everyone's going to message you now. And don't blame me when you get... You should have said that. All the recruiters are like, yes.
I'll go and cancel it now. I love connecting with people and hearing other ideas as well. So if anyone wants to get in touch, feel free. But look, advice-wise... we're here to do a job for the organisation, right? We want our people to turn up and love what they do, and having that commercial focus and understanding your value chain and your organisation, I think is critical, because once you get that stuff right, it's just a better place to work on so many levels. It's not, of course, all about making money and shareholder return. People have to love turning up, but fundamentally, if you get that right, you got a good chance.
Fantastic. Well, Aaron, thank you again for sharing your journey and experience, and I wish you all the best until next week.
Likewise. All right. Thanks, Chris.
Bye.